Hey, do you hear that? Psst. Do you hear that? Can you turn it up just a little bit? Do you know what that is? It's the sound of a campfire. It's one of my most favorite sounds in the whole world because so many of my favorite memories have been around that sound. From the first time I was around a campfire and roasted my first marshmallow, to the time that we'd sit around it at church camp and sing the campfire songs. One of my favorites was this one. Do you remember it? It only takes a spark to get a fire going. Or the Millennial New Year's, where my husband finally succumbed to the pressure from all the jewelry store commercials where they were saying, "What are you doing special for your wife on this Millennial New Year's Eve?" And he presented me with this gold bracelet with diamonds and sapphires. And when he gave it to me, he said, "This bracelet represents my love for you. The diamonds are because it will last forever. The blue sapphires are for our son's eyes. And the bracelet is so you can pass it on to our daughter someday." Ah, isn't he dreamy? And most recently, when Orville was talking about the parallels between our Cincy family and inviting people to join us around the campfire. Yes, it's one of my most favorite sounds in the whole world. Unless you hear the sound of the campfire inside your home and you don't have a fireplace. It was the evening of December 19th, 2010. I'd been teaching a class of advanced high school students, and they wanted to celebrate at the end of the semester, so they enthusiastically invited themselves over to my house for a party. And me being the queen of celebrating everything, I had thoroughly cleaned the house of my thoroughly decorated home in preparation for the night's festivities. I'd asked my 13-year-old daughter to go around the house to light all of the candles. And the guests arrived at 8 o'clock, and the last one left about 10:30 that night. And I was just going around to blow out the candles when I heard this familiar sound, but it was kind of out of context. It was a snapping, crackling sound, and I thought, is that some cheap candle wick gone bad? But it was too loud for that. And then I looked through our master bedroom into the master bath, and it was glowing with an orange that I knew what had happened. "Fire!" I yelled, as you do, and I ran into the kitchen to grab the kitchen extinguisher, and my husband had resurfaced from wherever he was hiding during the party. But that fire extinguisher wouldn't work, and we just stood there so helplessly as that fire was blazing to the ceiling. Then my daughter remembered, "We have another fire extinguisher in the basement, Mom," and so she ran downstairs and brought it up, and it worked, and we extinguished the fire. And then the smoke started to settle from the ceiling, that thick, dark, black smoke that was so choking. And I realized that, oh my goodness, the smoke is going to do more damage than the fire did. So I was running around, opening all the doors and windows on this very frigid 19-degree night. The fire was out, and that's when the smoke detector went off. Thanks a lot. I went ahead and called the fire department because I was worried that perhaps it had worked its way into the walls because I'd heard about those stories. And when the firemen arrived, the first thing they said was, "Candle fire?" I nodded, and then they said, "That's all we do this time of year." And although it was only a brief time, it had done about $2,000 worth of damage, but we were so grateful that it hadn't done much more than that. We could have lost it all. I'll never forget that oh-so-familiar sound that had brought me such joy in years past. But on that night, it brought anything but. But you know the rest of the story. Had it not been for that sound and for that fire, I would have never sworn off candles. I would have never asked my friend who had just started selling Cincy if I could just sniff her testers. I would have never decided that maybe I'll just sign up so I can have the product in my home myself. On May 2nd, 2011. I would have never put my website up and then made a post on Facebook that said, "Check out my new adventure," which resulted in a $220 order from an acquaintance in Nashville only 3 minutes later. I would have never turned to my husband and said, "Maybe I should just sell it this summer just to make a little extra money." I would have never answered that first question at the end of July when someone said, "How can I sell this too?" I would have never promoted to director in December 2011 with only 9 members in my Cincy family. And I would have never earned that trip for my husband and I to go to Punta Cana. Plus, 2 of my girls wouldn't have earned that trip for their spouses too. And I definitely wouldn't be standing before you now, sharing my story and my view of the 4th chord, take time to take care of yourself. You see, if it hadn't been for the sound of that crackling fire, I wouldn't have had the nerve to take the extra income I was making with Cincy and try to become a healthier me. You see, like so many other women, I was so busy taking care of everyone else and all of my extra responsibilities that I wasn't taking care of myself. Specifically, it resulted in some incredibly bad eating habits. It wasn't that I was sitting around stuffing myself. It was that I wouldn't eat, and then I'd be starving, and then I'd grab the wrong thing and eat too much of it. And when you combine that, those horrible eating habits, with a lifelong struggle with obesity, well, that's when you get this. It affected my knees to the point where it hurt to go up and down steps. So I started leaving a basket at the top so I'd only have to make one trip. It was having a negative effect on the relationship with my husband, because anytime he wanted to get up and go out and do something, I didn't feel like I had anything that I could fit into. So we'd end up staying home, and I'd end up drowning my sorrows in the very thing that was making me sorrowful in the begin with. It was a vicious cycle. So when things started to go better with Cincy and I started to get a little extra income, I decided I would start a rather expensive doctor-supervised weight loss program. And might I add that my second recruit was one of the doctor's assistants, because I always take my testers with me wherever I go. Needless to say, I tried to put the same determination toward getting healthy as I was putting toward becoming the best Cincy consultant I could be. And with each pound that dropped, my confidence started to grow. My mental state continued to improve. My relationship with my husband was getting better and better, because now I had the energy to get up and go whenever the opportunity arose. My knees no longer ached, and I could see my dreams becoming a reality. Only 7 months later, I'd finally reached my goal and had lost almost 90 pounds. I'd gone from wearing a size 2X, 3X to size 6. And actually, these are size 4s. But nothing was quite as sweet as putting on my white dress, which went so against my typical black attire, for the white night in Punta Cana with Cincy. Well, maybe it was a tad bit sweeter to be able to choose the ziplining through the jungle tour that I would have never selected in my heavier state. And I was whooping and hollering as I ran up and down the stairs of those platforms and stepping off the edge, and it was amazing. But I think the most poignant moment came for me after the trip. We had returned home, and I had the luggage on the curb as my husband went to get the car, and I looked at the 3 pieces of luggage, and I knew they all 3 together weighed 95 pounds. And then it hit me. I'd lost almost 95 pounds, and I'd been carrying that around on my body. And it was heavy, and it loaded me down. Wow. So these many months later, keeping this weight off, I say, yay me, and yay Cincy, for helping me become the newer, healthier me. Along with taking time to take care of yourself, we must also make weak things strong. Of course, my self-discipline that had been so weak was made stronger by my determination to win my battle against my weight. But I was definitely thrown a curveball at the spring sprint in January when they announced our new product line, Velada Belgian Chocolate Fondue. I was only a few pounds shy from my goal weight when I heard this, and I sat there thinking to myself, seriously, chocolate? I need chocolate like I need a hole in my head. But I had a few months to get my head wrapped around it, And it was in May that an app that I love to follow called Eat This Not That on Twitter, you can frequently see them on the Today Show. And I had bought their books to help me with my maintenance program. They came out with a link that was entitled The Best Date Night Foods. And of course, now that I'm taking more dates because I have these cuter clothes to wear, I thought, let me click on this and see what I need to be eating while I'm on these dates. And would you believe, when I got to the best dessert options, it was, drum roll, chocolate fondue. I couldn't believe it. It was like a miracle. The explanation was that chocolate fondue is much better for you as a dessert option because you're using healthier dippers like fruit and pretzel, and especially if you're using dark chocolate, which has a lot of other health benefits, much better for you than cheesecake or a brownie. I was so excited because it was like God was saying to me, eat more chocolate. So Scentsy was not only providing for me a safer home environment, and it helped me find a way to a newer, healthier me, but now through Velada chocolate, I had the best dessert option possible. I mentioned how becoming healthier improved my mental state. However, I must confess that sometimes I can get just a little mental. In spite of all my successes and blessings, sometimes this wave of fear will wash over me, of self-doubt and insecurities, and worrying about my family and worrying about my team disintegrating beneath me. And yet I know it's a lot of irrational fear, and what I have to do to try to help keep myself grounded is I take some time each morning to read some scripture and a devotional book or two, and try to see what wisdom, the nuggets that are revealed to me through that, and I'll journal it. And sometimes I'll even write my prayers for the things that I'm worried about, because it's almost like if I can just get it out of my brain and into that journal, it helps me focus on the rest of the day. And of course I want to journal some of my blessings too, because you don't want to forget that. But it's pretty cool to make that time each day to do that, and then to look back on it later and see how things have worked out. I think this will also help make our weaknesses grow stronger. So regardless of your belief system, it's really important to take time for some self-reflection. As Dr. Barbara DeAngelis says, women, and I'll add men, need real moments of solitude and self-reflection to balance out how much of ourselves we give away. I think that's a crucial component of our making our weaknesses stronger. Speaking of giving of yourselves, this brings me to the last point that Orville made. Contribute more than you take in a spirit of abundance. Give in excess to bless those around you. I can't agree more. I can't tell you how much joy it brings me to be able to give things away, and I've never regretted it. Whether it's giving extra free stuff to those faithful customers, or those customers that are on the fence and aren't sure whether they want to try it or not, and I'll give them some free things just to get them started, or maybe it's that group that needs a door prize in the community or a fundraiser. There's so much fun in just being able to give more than you receive. In fact, my first Scentsy family member was the first girl who said, "How do I do this?" And she said that after we had just totaled up her $1,200 home party. And it kind of helped that her husband was there to help us add the receipts together. And when she said, "How do I do this?" I replied, "Well, it's easy to sign up, and you know what?" And this is what I told her, and I wasn't even thinking about it. No one had ever told me to do this, but I was kind of excited about it. I said, "You know what? If you sign up, I'll give you $500 of this party, and then you'll hit your shooting star goal the day you sign up, and you'll get all the free product because it's your party, and it'll be so amazing." And then she said, "Well, how does this help you?" And then I kind of stuttered a little bit because it was like, I'm not sure. I know that it does, but I haven't read that far in my book, so I'll go read it and then I'll get back to you. So she signed up, and I gave her that party, or at least a chunk of it. I probably would have given her the whole party, knowing now what I know, but I was a little new at that. And she ended up being one of the girls that accompanied me with her husband to Punta Cana, and then the first girl that she signed up ended up going to Punta Cana too. So I would say that that was probably one of the best $500 investments I ever made. Wouldn't you? And this reminds me of a quote by the late Dr. Will Rose. "Success is not counted by how high you have climbed, but by how many people you brought with you. Contribute more than you take in a spirit of abundance. Give in excess to bless those around you, and the people you bring with you will be too numerous to count. So there you have the fourth chord. Trust in the chord. Trust in all four chords in their progression, and we can make beautiful music together. Just like that old camp song that's my favorite, remember? It only takes a spark to get a fire going, and soon all those around will warm up to its glowing. Does anybody remember the name of that song? It's called Pass It On. And that's my challenge for you, to take all the wonderful things you've learned through Spring Sprint and all the blessings you've received through your journey with Sensi and Velada and Grace Adele. Don't keep it to yourself. Be the spark and pass it on.